Hi everyone, and welcome to today's panel discussion on body image in the world of dance, jointly presented by the Hart Theatre, the UFT Festival of Dance, and the Only Human Dance Collective. My name is Rohina Kumar, and I will be a moderator for today's event. So before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. So this panel discussion will last for approximately 1.5 hours, with 30 minutes at the end for a Q&A session. So today's conversation will include discussions around body image, which may extend to related issues such as body dysmorphia, body shaming, eating disorders, and muscle-enhancing behaviors. We hope to create a space where everyone can engage with these topics in a thoughtful manner, but recognize that they may also potentially be sensitive to some people. So please feel free to engage or disengage with today's discussion based on what's best for your well-being. Even though this is a virtual event, we would still like to acknowledge the land on which the University of Toronto operates. So for thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting is still this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. We recognize that not everyone may be joining us from Toronto or even Ontario. So if you would like to learn more about the history of your land, please visit native-land.ca. So just to give everyone a brief introduction of what we're going to be discussing today. So according to various resources, body image is the emotional attitude, belief, and perception that a person has of their physical self, which can result in various complex thoughts or feelings and even behaviors. So generally speaking, the field of dance tends to value a very thin physique while also requiring extraordinary feats of athleticism. And dancers are often judged based on their appearance and are often pressured to maintain these traits, both during training and performance. Unhealthy perfectionism in terms of maintaining the ideal body type still persists in the field of dance, and there are multiple environmental and psychological factors or stressors that can influence or even onset these. So through a mental health lens, being exposed to these stressors in the long term can negatively impact self-esteem, trigger various behaviors such as persistent body checking, and on a serious level can trigger mental illnesses such as eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and various types of anxiety and depressive disorders. More recently, the body positivity social movement emphasizes the idea that everyone is beautiful and encourages individuals to love and feel good and build confidence in their own bodies. Another type of practice or movement is the body neutrality movement, which promotes the acceptance of your body as it is, even when you don't love it, and it involves decentralizing the body as an object that drives your worth. So in order to dive deeper into this topic and spread awareness, unity, and diversity within art forms and artistic practice, we've invited a panel of choreographers, dance instructors and performers, mental health professionals, and body neutrality or positivity activists for what will surely be a provoking and exciting conversation around body image in the world of dance. And it's my pleasure to introduce you all to them today. So first off, we have Gregory Carruthers. He is a Toronto-based choreographer, actor, and body positive activist. He is currently developing the Every Body on Stage project, which aims to break down stigma and fat phobia in the arts in an effort to reduce the harm done by body dysmorphia and disordered eating on the long-term health of artists, and to encourage the positive representation of all body types on the stage. Next, we have Joanne Camilleri. She's an accomplished freelance performer, choreographer, instructor, and artistic director with over 20 years of experience in performing arts. She's known as a pioneer of the fusion belly dance style and is recognized for her unique style, charisma, and magnetic stage presence and signature technique. So next we have Simone Samuels. She's a Toronto-based writer, vlogger, and fitness professional with an educational background in philosophy, political political science and law. She has degrees in she has an LLB and a BCL degree, and she's a licensed Zumba, Aqua Zumba, and Strong Nation instructor, and a personal trainer who loves writing about food, body positivity, law, race, and faith or spirituality. So lastly, we have Dr. Kyle Ganson. He's an assistant professor at the Factor Ibn Tosh Faculty of Social Work of U of T, and his research focuses on eating disorders among men and boys, high-risk behaviors, as well as violence, victimization, and perpetration among adolescents and young adults, alongside many other areas of study. His clinical experience has largely focused on individuals and families experiencing major mental health concerns, with a particular interest and expertise in eating disorders treatment. And finally, for those of you who may be joining us late, my name is Rohina Kumar, and I will be your moderator for today's event. I'm a U of T student doing the double major in psychology and human bio. I was the production manager for the Only Human Dance Collective last year, and I'm a self-taught dancer who loves hip-hop, contemporary, and ballet, and Bollywood. Sorry, not ballet. I don't know why I said ballet, but anyways. I'm really passionate about initiating conversations regarding various social issues within the field of dance, such as this one, as well as about mental health in general. So I'm really excited to have you all here today. I'm also joined today by my co-moderator, Cassie Iacovelli, who is one of the executive members of the U of T Festival of Dance. She's a student at U of T studying theatre, law, and bioethics, with a love for all aspects of performing arts, from performance to choreography and direction to design. And Cass will be serving as the president of the Drama Student Union, as well as the producer of the UC Follies this upcoming year. And outside of the world of performance, Cass also does equity research at the university and peer support work at the LGBT Youth Line. So I'm really excited to get today's discussion underway, and I hope you all are too. So I'm just going to get started with an opening question. So if the panelists, you guys could please introduce yourself and highlight how body image relates to your career or your connection to dance. So Gregory, you can go first.
Hi, folks. Thanks so much for having me. My name's Greg, as Rohina mentioned. I've been dancing since the age of 4. I danced competitively throughout the United States and Canada, and then I went on to study musical theater. I danced and acted professionally until I started choreographing in my mid-20s, and have been doing that ever since. I've choreographed throughout the province. Ooh, hello, hi. I've choreographed for U of T most recently for their production of Legally Blonde at Hart Theater. And dance is a big part of my life, but as a person who identifies as plus size, it's a complicated relationship that I have with dance, and hopefully one we'll explore this evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So Dr. Kyle, you can go next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Ganson. I don't have a ton of experience in dance per se, but certainly my research and my clinical experience working with individuals with various mental health concerns, including eating disorders and body dissatisfaction or body image issues, certainly is often tied up in different sort of performance ideals or expectations, whether that be about sports or performance in dance or theater in some ways. And generally my area of interest is sort of focused very much on these behaviors that certainly are, that sort of occur because of body image issues or body dissatisfaction. So certainly very excited to be here and be able to contribute to this conversation.
Thank you. All right, Joanne, you can go next.
Hello, everyone. I'm honored to be here. Dance is my life, so I have a very close relationship to it. And yes, through the years of me too, Greg, I started very, very young, but I think I was kind of the same age, and really started to feel great about going to classes. And then there were ages that were quite troubling, and I saw through the years of all my growing years through dance the changes. I am happy to say that these kind of conversations are so wonderful. I see that the diversity leaps and bounds in comparison to many, many, many years ago. And I do appreciate this sort of discussion between strangers and people all around the world now, which is amazing. So so besides being a teacher and and doing choreography, I've had many troops. I've taught classes all over Canada and the GTA that's pretty consistent. Performed in places, so I've gone through many different levels of dance that I could communicate, and through my experience through the years, that I hope I could enlighten, or maybe myself be enlightened through these conversations by these professionals that I'm surrounded with today. Really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. All right, so Simone.
Well, one thing I'll say is that I don't consider myself a dancer. I do dance, but I don't consider myself a dancer. And people might think, well, if you dance, you're a dancer. Just like if you write, you're a writer. But honestly, I hate it when people are saying, oh, you're a Zumba dancer. I'm not a Zumba dancer. I'm a Zumba instructor. And Zumba is a fitness program which happens to incorporate dance elements. All that to say, though, Zumba didn't feel welcoming to me. It felt a little bit of a hostile space in the sense of all the instructors, the Zumba instructors or Zumba master trainers, we call them Zumba education specialists or ZES. So the people who carry on the brand of Zumba were all very thin. They had six packs. Even the Zumba Nintendo Wii games and the Zumba, Xbox games, you see a lot of ripped people on the front of those covers. And so it didn't feel like a space where I would be welcome in. I too am plus size, which that's a whole other story. Some people look at me and they're like, you're not even plus size. That's a whole other story about identification, right? But I knew that I was bigger than the people I saw on the cover. So I wasn't even sure if I wanted to take a Zumba instructor training. It was always something I wanted to be involved in. At that point, I was taking Zumba like every day and I loved it. And, the feedback I was getting from other people in class when I was a student told me that maybe I should explore this further. So that's how I got into Zumba. And that's kind of my relationship between body positivity, body image, and Zumba. I always struggled with my body image growing up. But the more I got into fitness and the more that my whole fitness career, I can't even believe I even put those two words together. If you knew me as a fat kid in gym class, you never think I had a fitness career. The more that, that all kind of steamrolled and came together, the more that I developed more confidence in my body and moved away from just, body positivity to this more idea of, and Rohina, you mentioned this, body positivity, body neutrality, the idea of body liberation, that I'm more than my body. My body is the least interesting thing about me, and that I could do wonderful things with this body that God has given me. And and maybe the reason why I am the size that I am and the shape that I am is to fulfill whatever purpose it is that I have on this planet during my time here. So my work on body image and body positivity is personal, but now it is also professional, and it is interwoven in every aspect of what I do as not even just a Zumba instructor, but as a fitness instructor.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right, so we can just dive right into some of our general questions. The first question is, when did your journey with body image or body positivity begin, and what prompted this? So you're welcome to speak about how you were introduced to this topic, or maybe a personal struggle that you face with body image or body positivity. Okay, I can call upon Dr. Kyle first. We can maybe talk about how you were introduced to this research, maybe what sparked your interest in this research.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something that I've always thought about in my research, but also my clinical practice, is just not having enough space for males in general, like boys and men, to be able to actually talk about bodies and engage with their bodies in ways that are outside of what's socially accepted. Those are things like just first of all, being disconnected with your body, number one. Number two, sort of using bodies as weapons or tools, like whether that be sports or in other sort of formats. But then also, as similarly, just sort of how males internalize, expectations about body ideals, just like women do, and just sort of trying to understand, that experience. And so my research and my clinical practice has really guided my interest in trying to actually understand how people evolve over time to engage with their bodies in positive ways, and trying to figure out what ways we can sort of uncover and have conversations about male body image in general, to really open up that space for positive engagement to happen, positive behaviors to occur, and just positive and effective role modeling for future generations.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think, research in general, like they tend to focus a lot on women, even though, and like there's a huge, sort of misperception that women tend to go through more body image issues than men do. So, if the experiences of men are kind of neglected. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So Joanne, you can go next.
In terms of my experience with body image, I was very, very young when I was introduced to the fact that suddenly I didn't fit with the rest of the crowd in a class. I was quite young, 13 at the time. And so since then, my experience through the years with bodies, especially my own, is quite a roller coaster when I think about it. And the topic is, for me, when I'm teaching, in terms of this collaboration, anything to do with the human body, even the mind, and things I guess it's like our temple, what we are born with, is always intrigued me. And I know it starts with the mind, and it also starts with what we put in our body and so on and so forth. But definitely what we are surrounded with and what we are brought up with, what are we surrounded by, is such an influence, of course. So back to the story, I was 13 at the time, and it was a ballet class. So I find ballet has been the hardest on bodies, males and females. I don't know if it's more to females than male. I would imagine it was equal in this particular intense form of dance that pushes the limits. And I happened to be in a ballet class at the time. And if I zoom forward to today, I'm a belly dance teacher, and belly dance is my forte now. So the difference between what I grew up with and the Western disciplines in those years, because I do find they have changed. I have noticed troupes, with all shapes and sizes, and I think it's wonderful to see different bodies moving and what they can do. I mean, again, it's not about the six pack, it's about the fluidity, for instance, and especially with belly dance. And so that really opened my eyes, the shape of what a girl is born with, because we have children and we need to bear, or most women have a body where we need to have where we, if we choose to have a child, that we need to have the body to bear the child. So we're born in it with a specific shape. And I have to say, belly dance had opened up a whole new world in shapes and sizes. And I have seen a really great positive body image response in many, many ways. And then there are many, many negative ways that I've gone through. But I just have to say, my first experience was when I was 13. And today, through my growing years as a teacher, one who watches bodies, who explains technique, and it tries to explain how there are no comparisons. The most important thing is the passion that's coming from inside. And then it depends if you're doing a show or is it a class. But the positivity and the positive discipline, just positivity all round. As I grew into this particular field of dance, has been, in my area, more positive now than ever before, but have experienced many, many challenges. And even in a predicament where I was casting for a show and the participants, the performers, had to basically fit into costumes that were one size. And that was very, very uncomfortable for me. Yeah, and I disappointed people. I felt terrible. I was writing emails to these people about, please don't take this personally, and really, really tried to open up the conversation about the reason. It was just the reason this was happening. It was a theater production who already had the costumes. So it's been a whole whirlwind of ups and downs, even though my belief is not to be that person. I was that person a few times, and it was horrible feeling, even though I tried to communicate it, even though I personally tried to take the person aside and speak to them, the response was not what I was hoping. And so I have run into disappointments where I felt I had no choice. Even as a director, in a venue where I would hire performers, they had to fit the build, and it was quite challenging. So I'm in another field now, and I'm hoping that I can open this area in my career to a more variety of shapes and sizes. And I do encourage it. I have to say I've gone through experiences where I had kind of, I guess, no choice in the matter. But then I wonder, did I have a choice? But you're doing a job, and it's a catch-22. I have to say, as Greg, you must too, fitting a role, and that part of this particular career or work, career.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, that was a wonderful answer. I think the fact that you can sort of reflect back on those experiences and know that there's stuff that you have to sort of work on. I think that in itself is a huge step. So I'm glad that you were able to acknowledge that. So yeah, I think we can move on to Simone now.
So, so my parents are Jamaican. West Indians tend to be fat phobic. I don't know what to say. So for those who don't know what fat phobia kind of falls in the same gamut as homophobia, and phobia, if you look at the etymology of the word, is not just, being afraid of something, but a hatred of something. So with fat phobia, it's a hatred of fat. And you might think to yourself, people hate fat. Well, yes, they do. If you look at our broader culture, people hate fat people. They do. It's in medicine everywhere. But anyways, back to the question. So I grew up with fat phobic parents who always told me that I was fat, and fat was synonymous with being bad. So I always thought that my body was bad and that my body was unacceptable. And I had no buffer in this world against that fat phobia. It was not a situation where, I was coddled at school or anything. I go to school and I was reminded that I was fat. And so in every single sphere of my life, I was reminded that I did not fit. And I internalized that I probably would never win a beauty contest, but I could do well in school and I could get good grades. So I think that also probably explained why I was so assiduous and ambitious when it came to school. As I got older, I started to realize kind of that toxicity around me, and it really did really bothered me. And still to this day, one of the things that bothered me the most is, as a woman, it doesn't matter what you do. It matters about your marital status. That's all people care about. And if you fit kind of this white supremacist notion of beauty. And it bothered me that it didn't matter what kind of a person I was, or how good my grades were, or how many friends I had. All people would kind of be reductive to that is like, but you're fat. I remember when I was in my first year of university, I went to York University, Glendon campus for undergrad. And I was on the dean's list in my first semester. And I told my father, and he's like, that's a good job, but you need to lose some weight. So it's kind of that idea of, it doesn't really matter what you do. And it's from there that I realized, well, first of all, I need to put around some boundaries in terms of family members. But second of all, I need to surround myself with more positive imagery of people who look like me. And so I think my body image repair journey really started when I moved away for law school, and I was finally away from, family, and I got to kind of away from, like, I have to stand on my own 2 feet, and I have to surround myself. I get to create who I surround myself and kind of curate that. I also made sure I only follow people on social media. Well, not only, but to the great extent, people who look like me, people in larger bodies, but also people who are having an inclusive practice, and people have something to say about that. And when I was in undergrad, that's when I started to learn about feminism, right? And that's when I started to learn about, racism. And then that's what I started to learn about the tangential relationship between feminism and racism and white supremacy, and words like hegemony, and words like, like Hottentot Venus, and how, this Black body was seen as ugly and poked at and prodded at, for just being just odd to the people of that day. And as I started to kind of get into this, I started to really be like, body positivity is what I need. And I started to unknowingly become kind of that flag raiser when I was in undergrad, and then moving away to Montreal. So that's, I would say, is my first foray with body image and body positivity. It's many things in my life. There's a theme here. I kind of snowball into it. So at first it's a passing interest, and then it becomes a career.
Amazing, thank you. I'm sorry that you had to go through so many hardships when you were younger, and I think the intersection of all, your racial identity and body image and stuff, I think it all just comes together to just like affect you in a unique way. So I'm glad that you were able to work on that. And I agree that representation is so important. All right, so Gregory, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Simone, for bringing up fat phobia, because that's the big word in my personal journey with body dysmorphia and ultimately body positivity. Pardon me. I'm a little disappointed to say I only started my journey with body positivity in lockdown. I, as a dancer coming in, growing up in the dance world, which, as we're here having a conversation about it, is obviously incredibly fat phobic, and you sort of are placed based on the way you look. So when I went to college in my first year, they sort of put you into levels of dance that you're going to be with for the entirety of the year. And I was put in the most basic level of dance with people who had never danced before in their lives after I'd trained for 20 years. And you sort of look back on those moments and you're like, oh, well, they must have not believed that I was ready. I have 20, you talk yourself into believing people's fat phobia. Later on, when I went to graduate school, I was the first one who got a job out of school. I went to this cruise line audition, and we sort of, we danced for 4.5 hours, did this whole dance call. At the end of it, they sat us all down and, made the classic, like, don't eat too much on the ship or else we'll send you home as cargo, that old joke. And then after they released everyone, I got taken aside and was told that I would be considered, they wanted to work with me, but I would be considered legitimately once I lost weight and became shirtless ready, which I wasn't in my current body. I was, a very average body type back in the day. I was 21 dancing 24 hours a week. There wasn't a lot going on my body, but it was something that I had to go back to school with the knowledge that I just booked a job. I was the first one in my class to do it. And I knew that there was a caveat. I knew that until I did the thing and lost the weight, and by whatever means necessary, as demonstrated in a lot of media regarding about the ballet world specifically, that I've had a very up and down relationship with my body and my weight and my own history of disordered eating. And it took me being in the middle of my 20s and my muscles snapping and tendons getting pulled and losing my entire dance career to recognize that I've been fed a whole lot of garbage. I've been told that my body isn't one that people want to see on stage. And that's how I ended up choreographing, because I understood from my most fundamental experiences that no one wanted to see me dance. even though I had the ambition, I had the training, I had everything I needed, I just wasn't in the right body. So now my work is celebrated on other people, which is another, it's very exciting, but it's also, is it my dream? I don't know. So that's sort of my journey through body positivity, and it sort of led me to where I am now. I'm working on the project Everybody on Stage, and we're sort of reclaiming space, which as fat people we should be able to take up our space, but it's really hard. It's really hard to convince people, because everyone's talked to about their bodies. Everyone in every body type is, you're too skinny, you're skinny fat, you're this, you're that, everyone is in a category, and no one wants to be as fat as me. No one wants to be as fat as people fatter than me. And as soon as we sort of disassociate fat with bad, we can actually celebrate the people who move in those bodies and who exist in those bodies. And that's my goal. That's where I'm at. That's what I want to see moving forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So we can just move on to the next question. So how has your relationship with, or your understanding of your body changed throughout time? And how have other people influenced, or like how have other people's comments influenced or changed your perception or expectations of, sort of the ideal body? So I know some of you all touched upon that already, but if there's anything specific that you want to talk about, you guys can go ahead. So Joanne, you can go first.
What prompted me, or what came to my mind, I know I mentioned already of the fact that it was when I was very young in a ballet class that I was traumatized because I didn't look like everyone else. I was actually going through puberty. So your body's got, that's the other thing is these young dancers who are going through these growth spurts, whether you grow sideways or long ways. I was growing sideways, and I just happened to be getting a little bit rounder, and it really took a toll on my mental health through all my teenage years right up to the 20s. And I have learned a lot. I have 3 girls. And so I have really, really, really worked so hard to make sure they didn't have those phobias. And we talk, like, I've seen performers with bodies that are big, round, and beautiful on stage that I can't even take my eyes off of, that move like butter. And these kind of things I have always really, really tried to express in my classes. And there's a costume for everyone too. So and this has, through the years, my ballet years was really, 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 really hard. I did actually try out for the National Ballet. It was not a very good experience, but then I went into music, and then music got me back into dance, which I'm really happy about. But fast forward, belly dance, although there is still stigmas, restaurants I've worked in where I've directed, again, as I mentioned, as hard as it was for me as hard as I tried to communicate with the person who I was dealing with who I was bringing into the restaurant, I think there's a shape and size for everyone. There are people out there who love big people. They feel secure in them and love the curves and love the softness. And I envy that too. Like I never want to be too thin. And so, yeah, my experience has been through having maybe no choices. Going through puberty was not a choice in my life, but fast forward again, I really try my best through the years, through my experiences, through I am in a better situation now, which I'm just so grateful that I don't have those kind of pressures in the role of a director in a restaurant. I think I'm happy to say I don't have to do that anymore, because it is very, very much about what you look like. And I'm off to wonderful other theater things, which is great, because bodies, when I was watching them today, I'm sorry if I'm going off on a tangent, but It's watching a body move and do its thing. So I think that is the most important thing. And if I watch a bigger person on stage, I am so inspired, and it gives me faith. I don't know how to say it, but I have gone through a lot of traumas, a lot of growing, a lot of disappointments, even though I've never been that big person. And I have been told I'm not the right shape or the right, I've never been thin either. But yeah, my most important thing now through the experiences when I'm teaching, I talk about posture, and then I talk about how the posture and the moves are supposed to look and how different they will look on everybody, and just enjoying the bodies in the room. And then the positivity comes out. So I have to say, teaching these days, especially belly dance, has really brought a lot of self-esteem and confidence in a lot of females that I've taught. And males are always welcome in the room. Sometimes I find the dynamics can change when a male is in the room for some women. So my classes were always separated, only for the comfort of male and female. And then there were co-ed classes that I taught, especially at the university. It was always so lovely. So that's been kind of in a nutshell my experience, and so many little ups and downs that help us grow and see the real, I can't even tell, I mean, as a performer, it's what's within. So for me, when I'm watching, yeah, that's what I get really excited about. And I hope people can see more of that these days, is that it's not about the shape. And even the shape, whether big or small, can just ooze. It can ooze like whatever it is that they're trying to put out there and be beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joanne.
Thank you.
Simone, you can go ahead.
My perception of my body, how has it changed through time? I think education helps unlock a lot. So there's so many layers to this question. So I have to respond to this as cisgender, heterosexual, Black, plus size woman, right? And so I live at that intersection, intersectionality, right? Which is, to coin a term from Kimberly Crenshaw. I only mentioned that because I realize this audience is university students, and so you may not be familiar with these concepts, but intersectionality is a concept that was coined by a lawyer in the US named Kimberly Crenshaw. And that whole idea is that people have identities, but also people live at the intersections of those identities. So I'm not just a woman, and I'm not just Black, I'm a Black woman. And there are going to be nuances particular to me as a Black woman than if I were just Black or if I was just a woman. So my body has changed as I've learned about my Blackness, and as I've learned about my femaleness, and learned about what it is to have a body. My body and my relationship with it has changed also as I learned more about fitness. I have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So as I learned about that syndrome, I also learned that, my testosterone's a little higher. And so, my body has a little bit of insulin resistance. And that's why I carry weight around my midsection. It's not because I'm just fat. I have a reason for my fatness. It's not because, I eat too many cookies. It's because my body's not sensitive to insulin. So even learning about kind of health conditions has also helped me with my relationship to my body. And then I, just even reading literature, I keep on thinking about Sabrina Strings. She's a professor, a sociologist, who writes about the Blackness and writes about the body. And I'll add this to the resource list that will be sent to you all at the end. She writes a book called Fearing the Black Body. And she also wrote a book, an article rather, that came out in the New York Times a few months ago about how many people are blaming COVID on the Black body as opposed to blaming COVID on our social determinants. And the reasons, like, why are Black bodies so sick and why are they affected so much from COVID? It's not because they eat too many Twinkies, it's because of racism. It's because of slavery. So the more I learn about that, the more that I learn that fatness is complicated. And that it's not just, it's not a moral failure. I think there was a point in my life where I thought it was a moral failure. Like I was doing something wrong. I'm obviously not exercising enough, or I'm not eating enough carrots or lettuce, until I realized that that's probably the least of everything, that there are other intersecting realities that make bodies the way they are. And to Joanne's point, I love houseplants. If you were here with me in my living room, you'd see the little jungle I have created. And one of the reasons why I love houseplants and what I've noticed about plants, and I'm always like fascinated by their diversity. There's another plant that I want to get called a Calathea matrix. And the leaf literally looks like, it's also called Calathea musica, because it looks like the leisure of music on a leaf. And I'm so surprised at diversity in the biosphere. It's so interesting that when it comes to humans, we don't think about that same diversity. We assume that everybody's supposed to be thin. It boggles the mind, and nobody dares think that maybe some people were actually born fat. We think that fatness is pathology. It has to be fixed, right? As opposed to, no, maybe people are naturally fat, and that is how they are healthiest. God forbid somebody could be fat and healthy. Maybe people are naturally thin, and maybe people are naturally somewhere in between. So just like how we're able to appreciate the diversity of dogs and cats and plants, we ought to be able to appreciate the inherent natural diversity of human beings. So as I started to learn and got older, so a lot of this is a process of getting older, right? I wasn't like this when I was 22. When I was 22, I was different. But now in my early 30s, I have a different understanding and thus more of a peace with my body, and not perfect. And I also feel like I have to underscore that point. I don't know, because we swim in fat phobia and diet culture, right? This idea that everything around us is about a diet, then a lot of that is in me. So I have to do the daily work of uprooting that. That's same thing when we talk about anti-racism, how you have to do that daily work of being anti-racist. You have to do that daily work of being fat phobic because of the society in which you live. And so there's no point in which, especially as I continue to be fat and Black and a woman, in which I will be able to say that I've arrived, right? I don't anticipate being 40 years old and being completely at peace with my body ever, because the messages around me are incessant and they tell me that it's wrong. But I'm certainly much further ahead today than I was 10 years ago.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was pretty inspiring. Gregory, you can go ahead.
Again, following Simone. I learned something. Thank you. But no, you're absolutely right. It's sort of it's you really have to unlearn fat phobia in your own life before you can even start on this journey of being able to walk into a space and not being concerned that, you know, people might notice that you're bigger, or that you are like, I've been at war with my body since I can remember, my entire childhood. And a lot of it is learned behavior. My mother struggled with her own issues with disordered eating. And you know, it's been interesting working on this project with me because she's helping me with the research component, and she's learning a lot. And we've had some really amazing conversations about, you know, how she internalized her own fat phobia and passed it on to us because she was just so desperate for us to not live the life that she did, where she felt invisible and erased, and no, especially as a woman, people, we had so many conversations about how many times people just never saw her in a space. And she went back to get her doctorate at 65, and still that didn't help her take up any space, you know? And I had to start unlearning that behavior, and it's been amazing watching her and my whole family sort of going through, because we're all fat. Like, my family was never meant to be thin. My partner's family they're all an entirely different body type than I am, and they were all born in a thin body, and I was born in a fat body, and I've been fighting it my entire life. I've been resistant to it. I've been living each day waiting for the next day when I will be thinner than I am today. and I put so many conditions on my own life. I'll go to the beach when I can fit into this bathing suit. I'll take my shirt off in public when people won't be scared of what I look like. No one cares. No one cares what you look like. And realizing this in my 30s, I just wanted to kick myself because I spent so much time desperately wanting people's approval, and everyone's the main character in their own life. They truly don't care what you, all the insecurities that you have. No one's watching you eat. No one's watching you exist. No one's watching you sit down in that chair and hoping that it holds, you know. It's you don't realize how fat phobic our world is until you live in a fat body in it. And you know, going on a flight shouldn't be a scary experience for me where I need to decide whether or not I need to buy a second seat because that's a thing. You know, it's a scary world, being fat in a world where you're constantly inundated with images of thin people, and how my approach to fitness, because of my experience where I was told to lose weight, I went to the gym because I had to, because it was the only way I would be able to succeed in my career. So now, 10 years later, trying to unlearn that, I actually enjoy moving my body in a way that gets my muscles moving and helps make them stronger and builds them. And I have to unlearn so many parts of my own life. So exactly, you're right. It's a journey, and it's something that I'll never be done doing, but it's something that I can feel all of this weight, no pun, all this weight that I've been carrying around melt away. And it's a journey that I just hope everyone goes on, regardless of the body that you're in, because it changed my entire life. Thanks.
Well, thank you. All right, Dr. Ganson, is there anything you want to add to this question?
I mean, those were really great responses. So I feel like I want to let them be heard. I will just add that I think something that I continually, and for my own process, I mean, everybody has a body image experience. Everybody has a interaction with the different messages we get about bodies in the world. And so I'm not immune to that. I think thinking outside of the personal, I'm thinking more of like a more larger sort of stance where I come from, which is thinking about things on research and sort of large population level. I think something that always sort of catches me, or my perception of body image and sort of body ideals, continue to change as we just learn more and more, again, in my area, which is mostly among boys and men, and their experience with eating disorders or disordered eating behavior or body image or body dissatisfaction. Just continually being surprised as that research grows, how many boys and men are doing things to change their bodies in certain ways, oftentimes looking for increasing muscularity, increasing toneness, increasing strength, and doing things that are quite detrimental to their health. So like things like, using steroids or other performance enhancing substances or supplements, or excessively exercising, or going on very restrictive dieting, or cycling between restrictive dieting and like eating overconsumption of foods or proteins or whatever it may be. So I think, again, thinking from a research perspective, where I usually sit, just sort of understanding and capturing like the sheer prevalence of that on a more larger scale, really it's great to sort of hear these individual experiences and couple that with that it's actually, quite normal, for people to be, unfortunately quite normal for people to be engaging in some of these behaviors and having some of this dissatisfaction with their body. And that's just problematic in general. And I think calling light to it like we are here is obviously extremely important. So certainly to answer the question and succinctly, my experience has changed just because as this new research comes out and as we learn more and more, and as body ideals shift and change, it's just surprising every day when we get these new figures or get these new numbers, or just understand how this impacts the lives of people on a more global scale. So that's what I'll say.
Thank you so much. Okay, those were amazing answers. Okay, so moving on to the next question. I think Jillian will send it on the chat as well. So some individuals struggle with body insecurities and body dysmorphia, and they also struggle with finding the line between healthy and slim. So why do you think that people often use the terms healthy and slim interchangeably? And what do you think a healthy body should look like? So I think, Simone, you can start off.
When I was reading these questions beforehand, I was like, I had a feeling that'll ask you this question. Okay, well, so the idea of healthy has changed over time and depending on different cultures, right? So there was a time where, oh gosh, don't quote me on this, but I want to say like Victorian, medieval. There was once upon a time fat people were considered healthy. Y'all could Google when that was, but I know that existed. And then our idea of health has changed as our idea of diet has changed. Fat people were considered healthy because food was scarce. So if you were fat, that means you were well fed, which means you had money, right? And money is attractive even today, right? And then as life and times have changed, right, and food has become less scarce, and even as our ideologies around what a body looks like and different conceptions of beauty has changed, that has also changed what we consider healthy. The idea right now of health or beauty is one that's rooted in white supremacy, right? Thin and white, typically white. And that's, I will have to say too, that's a Western one. There was a research done or an experiment done where they asked different graphic designers to design what you think is beautiful in your culture. And it's really interesting, if you Google this experiment, what different countries decided was the most beautiful. All that to say, it has changed over time. It has also changed in terms of place. Because of diet culture, we now believe that healthy equals slim, right? And when I say diet culture, just again to explain, diet culture in the same sense of like rape culture. Just like how rape culture kind of places blame on the rape survivor, diet culture places blame on the dieter that you're not doing enough. So because of, this diet culture of Weight Watchers and, my parents grew up with Jenny Craig and Slim Fast, we now equated healthy to slim. And the idea that if you're working out, you will lose weight. And calories, it's about calories in and calories out. A lot of what we know now, we didn't know before about nutrition as well, right? So once upon a time, egg yolks was a bad thing. Once upon a time, like people didn't eat butter, remember? Butter was demonized, and so we ate margarine. And so, but that's what the nutrition science at the time was showing us. Once upon a time, we thought fat was bad. And so you had low fat everything. But then the nutrition science has changed. And now we realize, oh my gosh, fat actually is good and satiating. And butter is actually better than margarine. And you can actually eat egg yolks. You won't get high cholesterol. It actually really has a lot of good vitamins. So as our thinking has changed, that has also influenced how fat and healthy, the interplay between being fat or slim and healthy. So all that to say, it has changed as society has changed and depending on place. But where we are right now is healthy does not equate with being slim, because what we have also found in the research is that you could be really slim and have a fatty liver. You could be really slim and have cirrhosis. You could be really slim and have all these different types of disease. What research has also been showing is that you could be fat, or what pathologies like to say, obese. I hate that word, obese and morbidly obese and overweight, because it implies that you are over a certain weight and that everybody should be at a certain weight, when body diversity does not work like that. Not everybody who is 5'6" is going to be 150 pounds. Some of us are ectomorphs, endomorphs, etc. But all that to say, we've taken obesity and morbid obesity, and people have done research on these people and realized, wow, you're really fat and obese, and we're calling you morbidly obese, but your A1C, that's your blood sugar, your A1C is fine. This goes against everything that we know about diabetes. And it's like, oh, wow, you don't have high blood pressure. How could this be? Because we had this whole assumption that if you're fat, you're eating Cheetos and you're not exercising, right? And so because now we have new research, we have new information, we realize that actually, and this is still unfortunately contended, like it's a contentious issue, but actually you can be fat and healthy if we look at health in terms of blood, our blood tests and other monitors. You could actually be thin and unhealthy, right? I've heard from other people who say, yeah, I have a thin friend and all they do is eat fries and burgers and they're thin, but they can't run to the bus. They can't catch the TTC bus after class. And it's like, But the fat person who can catch the TTC bus is demonized. So what I like to do as a personal trainer is try to break that link. And it's really, trying to turn all that we think we know about health and fitness on its head and realize that healthiness could exist in a variety of different sizes. There's a movement actually and a book called Health at Every Size. It's by Dr. Lindo Bacon. And they talk about, how you could literally be healthy at every size. So that's a book I commend to your reading. And that's kind of the philosophy I choose to espouse. So that long-winded explanation, if you get nothing, is that health is not synonymous with being slim. You could be literally healthy at any size.
Perfect. Wow. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Gregory, if you have anything to add, go ahead.
Not much, but I fully agree. The synonymous of nomenclature that healthy and slim are the same thing is once again fat phobia. As someone who's been doing a bunch of research into sort of the medical bias towards fat people and how so many conditions go undiagnosed because you need to go on a diet, as someone who's been on all of them, I've truly have done them all. I've been at my healthiest in times when I haven't been on a diet on something specific, haven't been only consuming fats or only consuming no carbs or only consuming whatever. The times that I've been listening to my body and responding intuitively, those are the times that I've been healthiest in my life. So I fully agree. Health and slim are not equal in terms of words. I like the end of that sentence. Next.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Dr. Kyle, if you have anything to add.
Oh, that's good. I wholeheartedly agree. I think what I'll add is that I think there's also now, like Simone was sort of mentioning, like movements towards like diet and slim. I actually think the movement is now moving towards like tone and muscular and fit. And I think that's the next frontier that we will start to see, is that slim is actually even for women, which oftentimes like sort of ideal for women is this thinness, and sort of behaviors obviously among women are trying to achieve that sort of thinness. But there is a shift that's actually moving towards a more toned sort of fit ideal, which is different than a slim or thin ideal. And again, I think, and then again, if we incorporate males into this conversation, I think that the slim is kind of like out the window. Like most males don't really want that. They want that muscular, they want toned, they want fit, they want strength, they want, and even I'm assuming in the dance world and in the performance world in general, whether that be sports or theater, is probably about performance. It's about being able to last the longest on stage, be able to recover as quickly as possible. And I do think that in that conversation is unhealthy diet practices like using performance enhancers or like over-the-counter supplements, which are really unregulated. And so bringing back into some of the conversation Simone was having around diet culture, the role and responsibility is on the individual to decide and choose, is this like supplement, let's say, this supplement that says it's going to help me recover my muscles faster so I can get back on the dance, on the stage to sort of practice again. Is that safe? And is that a okay thing for me to do? The responsibility is on that person to make that choice. Oftentimes those are people who are young, maybe a little bit uneducated about the process of how those supplements get, sort of approved and put on the shelves and who makes those decisions. So it sort of sets up an unfortunate and maybe potentially problematic situation for particularly young people, but obviously all people of all ages. So I think that I agree, like, separating this sort of healthy and slim is obviously really problematic. I would also sort of agree that like, just because you can do like 100 push-ups or something like that doesn't actually mean you're particularly healthy if you're using particular substances or engaging in really problematic food behaviors or actually over-exercising your muscles. Like that's actually also not healthy too. So I think incorporating like all of that into the conversation is hugely important. And again, as I sort of started out my conversation, my contribution was creating spaces for males and people who are actually engaging in some of those behaviors into the conversation around this diet culture, body image, what's healthy, what's not healthy. And that's a major problem for boys and men in particular, is because we actually say, hey, good job, you're going to the gym for 6 hours a day, or hey, you look really strong, not really going any deeper into like, is there like a problem here, or is this totally normal, or is it impairing their functioning at all? And so, yeah, just, my takeaway would be include all aspects of potentially problematic, food behaviors or exercise behaviors, performance behaviors, into that sort of dialogue of like, what's healthy, what's slim, what's toned, what's muscular, like what is healthy, and all that, and really trying to understand and unpack that more than just saying, oh, you look strong and you're going to the gym a lot, like you must be healthy. That's obviously not actually true. So that would be my contribution here.
All right, awesome, thank you. So Joanne, anything to add?
I agree with everyone in the group. I mean, your ideas and background experience and live experience from when you were younger, and I see, the similarities, and I do agree with you there. Slim does not equal healthy, and I never, I did believe it till I think I was in my 20s. And for me today, just not to repeat what everyone has already said that is incredibly clear and true, is health really does start with the mind. So if our mind is healthy, we can agree with what we are saying. Also, like when Greg mentioned, you were healthiest when you weren't in all this pressure telling your body what to eat, what not to eat, what you can't do, no, you can't. And you have to, it's such a fine line. And for me, yeah, I mean, when I see a person, I don't look at size and shape. Usually the color of their eyes and their well-being, and how they look at you straight in the eye, and how the confidence in their well-being is health to me. And I'm not a doctor, so of course I could be missing out on things, but I certainly believe that, slim, and as Dr. Kyle did mention, in my world, I have seen it go from super thin to now healthy, but stronger and looking healthier. I do find in the female world too, in the world, I mean, I am surrounded by more females than males for some reason, but we like to think about us being strong as opposed to thin. Like if I see a female body look a little bit more masculine, I'm happy for that individual, and I hope that she's happy inside. And yeah, so it certainly starts within. It's not loving what your body looks like and what we are born with, and appreciating it. And I think when we start doing that, we tend to fall in a place that fits. We end up fitting that role, or that, just like Simone, for me, if I was in a class and you were teaching, just looking at you would inspire me, and wanting to, like leaps and bounds. And it's such an inspiration to see first of all, the way you, when I see a smile exude, a teacher who's engaging and teaching, that's everything. Then I want to push hard. I want to make it work. So yeah, it's such a well-rounded question, in the sense that health it comes from all these entities. So I agree with all of you. Thank you.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much. All right, so the next question. So we have a separate question for Dr. Ganson. So this is directed more towards Simone, Greg, and Joanne. So what are the best ways to address issues around body image in a dance rehearsal or space? And what do you do to ensure a safe space for your dancers or movers? And how are you adopting body positivity or neutrality practices into your work? So Gregory, you can go ahead first.
I think the big way to start is to not only look at the biases towards bigger bodies or smaller bodies in the room, to address all the biases in the room, because as we're quickly learning, Eurocentric dance is not built for everyone. It is traditionally been taught in a specific way that has erased a lot of the history, and I think that addressing the space as an entire entity is where we need to start. Dance is specifically known for being abusive, as you've seen in, Black Swan or any ballet movie. That the approach that people often take is one where the teacher is in control, and dancers are eager to please, and they will do anything it takes to succeed. And I think changing the culture of the entire dance world or the entire theater world is where all this work has to start. And also society has to change before any of this gets addressed. But specifically to make these rooms safer, the way that costuming is approached, which Joanne touched on a bit, it is incredibly commonplace for you to be cast based on the costumes that already exist for projects, which spend an extra $100 and we're good to go. Then you can actually hire the people who deserve to be on that stage and not the people who just fit into the costume, which is incredibly commonplace. And making sure that as being aware of what fat people go through when they walk into a space, being aware that the rickety chairs you have make me self-conscious and make me worry that I'm going to break it. Asking me to stand on a table, which I know I will break. I had an experience in college where this dance teacher brought in inflatable little garbage balloons from the dollar store, and we would the exercise was to roll around on them and feel the space. What theater school? And I took one look at that little ball and I was like, I'm going to pop that. And I had an ally. I had a friend who was my roommate, and he was also a big dude. And he was like, we can't, sir. Please no, don't make us do this. And he's like, not once in my 10 years of teaching has anyone ever broken one of the. I broke a ball. He broke two. So and then we had to sit there and watch. There was no okay, well, lay on the ground and feel the space or whatever we were doing. There wasn't an alt version of it. It was, you'll do it this way because that's what I've prepared and that is what this class is. And my education, the experience that I received was not the one that was intended, hopefully. So you sort of want to look at what your students are taking away from that experience. Is it the experience you're trying to give them? And if not, how can you accommodate it? The biggest thing to do is just, ask people, especially with people going on their own journeys of body positivity or body neutrality. They all identify by different words. I prefer being called fat because I want to demystify that word and separate it from bad. But a lot of people are not comfortable with that. People prefer curvy or thick or whatever. But I think just asking people, I recognize I'm in a different body than you. If there's anything that I can do to help accommodate you in this space, let me know. And I think just starting every conversation, every room you walk into, opening up that space, and not just for plus size people or thin people or anyone struggling with their body identity, opening that space up to anyone who doesn't feel welcome in that space by default. It's on you. You need to do the work to make them feel safe in that space.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Joanne, go ahead.
Yes, so I agree with everything Greg and Kyle have mentioned. And in terms of, I'm sorry, I think, okay, I'll just rewind because now I got confused who actually answered this question, but all your answers are so great. So yeah, when I start a class, I really welcome everybody in the class, and I explain how the differences, the beauty of the differences. I never expect anybody to try and do certain moves based on their shape. I've seen bigger bodies be way more flexible than thin bodies. And I recognize certain bodies as being more flexible than others just by the way they've gone into certain moves, not because of their body type. And so when I'm in a class, I speak to everybody the same. And when I am critiquing, it's about the move and about the transition and about executing the step. It's not about the shape you're in. And I do feel very lucky, I have to say, with Middle Eastern dance, which is called belly dance, because we're isolating and we're not expected to necessarily have, so it's opposite to ballet in the sense that our lines are not all necessarily, it's not a linear dance, it's more of an internal where we're isolating. So any body can look beautiful. It just has to be in the right posture. So by going back to what Greg was saying, it is our responsibility as instructors and teachers and choreographers, as if we want to make it a safe space, to make it a safe space, it starts right from the top. And then everyone should understand where the teacher is coming from. And then hopefully everyone is on the same page. But I would never, I think also, yes, just I guess at the beginning, welcoming everybody and embracing all the different diversity and bodies and colors and shapes and sizes. And two, if there is a reason for someone to feel intimidated in any way, make that clear to please come to me if you have any questions or concerns or anything. And keeping that safe space also opens up people's minds and opens their hearts to be able to open and feel they can say something that may not feel as comfortable. And being out of your comfort zone is a good thing too, but it shouldn't be a humiliation or a trauma. It should feel invigorating, not traumatizing. So I hope kind of saying the same thing, but just expressing that I do agree with you there, Greg, as a role model. It starts from you. Yes, definitely. Male or females? Yeah.
Thank you, Joanne. So Simone, go ahead.
I agree with everybody. I think so for one thing, so you never know who's going to be in your class. That's number one. And this is something that I've learned over the years. And again, like I said, I haven't arrived. It's not like I'm the guru now, and I continue to learn. But one thing I have learned over the years is that people are going to come into your class and they may be, living with an eating disorder. They may be, struggling with their body image, etc., all sorts of things. So one thing that I'm very careful about is my language. I don't say things like, and remember, I'm not a dance teacher. I'm a fitness instructor. So I don't say things like, we're going to burn some calories today. I don't care about how many anything, so there's that. And then I don't say anything like, we have to, like, if it's a class after Thanksgiving, it's not going to be like, oh, we're going to, work off that pumpkin pie from yesterday. We need to, I try to be careful about saying buns of steel. I try not to make comments that make you make a association between fitness and appearance, because at the end of the day, fitness is not about appearance. Even when I come into my classes, it's very much about functionality. So I explain why we do the things that we do. Why are we doing bicep curls? Well, if you have stronger biceps, it helps you carry groceries. And carrying groceries is important when you have no car. Why are we working on our buns? Well, your glute muscles are one of the largest muscle groups in your body. It powers you through movements. It helps you go upstairs, downstairs, and your glutes are going to also support your core, your abdominals, and your lower back. So I tell them about the functional reasons for why we're doing what we're doing and make them focus on that, as opposed to appearance, I don't even say stuff like we want to get toned or we want to get, because so when we talk about body positivity, it's all about saying, yeah, your body is beautiful. But when we talk about body neutrality, it's about saying, what happens if I don't think my body is beautiful? Like, my body will never be beautiful to me. And it's about saying, like, that's okay. And then body liberation being like, you're more than a body. Appearance shouldn't figure in any of that, because you're so much more than your appearance. And then I also try to break down the linkage between this idea of working out for punishment. I try to inculcate this idea that you work out of joy, and the fact that you're able to move, and fitness feels good, even if you're not trying to be fit, because maybe that's not even everybody's goal. Like, movement feels good. Your body is made to move. Motion is lotion, and the fact that the more you move, the easier life is as you get older. So I try to have that kind of language. So language is key. And then I start all my classes with a little bit of a body image manifesto that I came up with. And I tell everybody to raise their right hand, even though they might think it's winky, dinky, and dorky, but I say you have to do it and repeat after me. I have a good body. There's nothing wrong with my body. My body is good. And there's no judgment here. And I tell them to point to one another like it's church, and, shake your partner's hand. and even tell themselves, no, there's no judgment. Because especially for Zumba's not the only format I teach, but Zumba and dancing tends to make people feel very self-conscious and very vulnerable. I've had people apologize for their dance moves before class even began. And I'm just like, I'm not here with a scorecard. Like, you could just move as you want to. So that's how I let it be a safe space. I make mistakes. My pants have split in front of my class. I've farted in front of my class. I make mistakes. And so that really levels the playing field quite quickly. And I hope that's also what has helped it be more inclusive. And as Joanne said, always being open to feedback. I learned from the instructors that I've had that I really loved, and I take pieces of what they've done. And so one of the things that one of my instructors used to do is stand at the door of the studio and greet people as they exited. And I try to do that too. And I learn names. And when I learn names, people realize people have a different experience of coming into my class. It's not about, I just want to get stronger or whatever. It's like, Simone knows my name. Simone sees me, Simone misses me when I'm not here. And we become a big family. And I've noticed that, like, your vibe attracts your tribe. So the people who come to my class tend to be easy, chill people like me. They're not like, super buff, super, this workout wasn't hard enough type people. And so I haven't had any issues.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Love how, everyone's practicing inclusivity in their spaces. So I love that. All right. So specific question for Dr. Ganson. So how do you think the constant weight preoccupation impacts people's perception and image and behaviors of themselves and their bodies, and particularly in boys and men, since that's what your research focuses on, and in the short term versus the long term as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like people sort of answered this question in many ways throughout this whole presentation. So, I mean, certainly no one's immune to the impacts of social expectations, whether that be from in a dance class, whether that be in a school, whether that be from media pressures or social pressures or family or peers. And certainly what we know from research and theory is that the more those pressures are ingrained and internalized, the more one sort of feels negative about their body image, feels some level of objectification or marginalization in some form or fashion that often leads to disordered eating behaviors and towards goals to either increase muscle mass like I've talked about, or increase tone, or become more thin or slim. And so those sort of behaviors can obviously go in one way or the other. I think to say it really succinctly, I think it's immensely impactful. It can be, extremely impactful in negative ways. It also can not be, right? I mean, having spaces where like in a dance realm, or in the sports realm, where performance bodies are really common, and they're just like the main sort of aspect of the event, if you will. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has struggles with this, or everybody struggles with disordered eating or body image issues. There's obviously a confluence of things that occur that sort of lead down paths that are maybe more negative or maladaptive or problematic for people. So it's definitely not an all or nothing, but certainly spaces where body appearance and weight-based activities are really the focus point, and the spotlight is on that. Again, no pun intended necessarily. That certainly increases some level of risk, and certainly boys and men are not immune to that. They certainly are impacted by it. They just don't always. The light and the sort of shield doesn't come off often, because they're not really allowed the space to talk about it, or there's a lot of stigma around that they may feel that way. So any way that spaces can be created to have those conversations and normalize that is obviously really, really important for boys and men in particular, but of course everybody. I mean, it's not just boys and men who need that stigma to be taken away. I think there's just an extra layer for the male experience. So that would be my thought.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So we're about to reach the 9 o'clock mark. So I'm just going to move on to the last question that we have, and then move on to the Q&A session. Okay. So our last question for today is, over the past year during lockdown, many individuals have changed the way in which they engage with their bodies, exercise and dance, whether it be taking online fitness classes, sitting behind a computer, making the time for walks, or simply engaging in exercise for maintenance rather than enjoyment or fulfillment. So what challenges have you seen within yourselves or your students or dancers, or even just in the literature, while working remotely, and how can we reconcile with the realities of our bodies? So Joanne, you can go first.
That was a loaded question. I was looking at it, and yes, COVID has had an impact in a lot of people I have spoken to, or people that have come to me. And for me, I have to say, not having a studio to go to has really tested my discipline. And although I do feel I have the discipline because I've been doing it all my life, it has been uninspiring at times. My teaching, I do miss bodies in the room. I miss the interaction. And I fear that a lot of people who used to have these classes in, well, first of all, my hat goes off to teachers who were able to switch into the virtual world. It took me a little bit longer. I did do some performances to raise money for COVID and to help different charities. But not having the energy in the room, not having somebody live help you move has had a bad negative impact on quite a few people. Some people have jumped into the virtual world and are fine with it, but for me, I really, really have to say that when I'm teaching, the first thing I have to say is that I understand the challenges. And then some people really want to do the exercise and can't do the virtual and don't have the means, for example. But the hands-on and being able to critique has been a challenge. But past that, in the winter months, I know has been challenging for a lot of the masses. And I think if you've already had a little bit of an issue with COVID, has caused a lot of mental problems. So I was going to say something about the body, but it has caused, it's sometimes a trickle effect too. So I have noticed in what I do, for instance, my career has always been performing and teaching, and it's always been outside my home. So basically my whole career stopped when COVID happened, when the world pandemic and everything closed. I feel very, very lucky that although I've been through traumas mentally and physically, I'm in a space where I was able to passionately get into my art in other ways because I've had more than one means. And so I have been sitting more on my computer than I enjoy ever sitting on it. And my eyes, I'm wearing glasses regularly more now than ever before. And I felt back, I'm trying to sit up now. I have felt back problems from sitting, even though I teach how to sit in classes and how to sit up and at the edge of the chair and so on and so forth. So even as an instructor, a teacher, one who's very, 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 very active, COVID has made such an impact in so many ways that I think health and well-being, even this conversation today we're having, we should have more and more and more of them. We should embrace our different ways to be physical. And I think we have tried. I have read, I have seen, I have done as much as I could and tried to do my part to encourage. But it's been tough. And sometimes I feel I haven't been there as much as I would have liked to. But I have tried, and I've tried to teach voluntarily too, as much as I can. And I also felt I didn't even, as much as I wanted to be out there virtually, I didn't have the means to promote it so much. I'm not as good promoting as I would love to. So even though I wanted to, I found that my students, I wasn't able to reach out as much as I would have liked to, and the means and so on. So I hope that answered your question. It's a loaded question. And we really need to, I hope that this trauma that the whole world has gone through has enlightened people like the doctor and Greg and Simone to encourage this kind of mentality more and put it out there more and show that that health comes from within. There's been a lot of challenges. I know a lot of friends who have problems sleeping now, problem with anxiety. I've suffered through anxiety with this whole thing too. And you need to have ways to reach out there, and there are a lot of ways. And I hope that I can do my part as a teacher and a teacher of the body. And I just want to make one more point. Simone, I totally agree with you in terms of when you mentioned about teaching and how you go about teaching and talking about muscle groups and body parts and why they are important. Biceps and triceps, yes, they're important so that you can pick up your groceries. You can walk down the street and be able to do it. And those little things that they should teach us in school, is to, your body is something that's going to keep you healthy throughout your life. It should be a mentality as opposed to a quick fix, for example. But yeah, so thank you, Rahina.
All right, Simone, anything to add?
Yeah, Joanne, I really appreciate you talking about the effects on teachers or instructors, because I didn't even think about myself. But certainly, so the effects of COVID on instructors, it was hard. A lot of people lost their businesses. Certainly, a lot of people lost their jobs. Like if you were teaching at a gym, you were furloughed, you were laid off for a little bit. Well, indefinitely, really, in Toronto, right? Because gyms have only been open for about maybe a few weeks in the past 15 months. There goes my voice. 15 months. So it's been really hard for instructors, especially if this is your bread and butter. For students, the number one thing I hear from them, well, I'll first say that I teach an audience that's not looking for weight loss. The people who come to my classes through Body Positive Fitness, the business, they're looking to enjoy movement in their body and be in a safe space with other people who are of all sizes, but typically larger sizes. But certainly the parlance, the general discourse has been around I gained the COVID-19 or the quarantine 15. So there's been a lot of talk about gaining weight during this time. And what many fitness influencers, and myself included, and many nutritionists and dietitians and people in the space have been saying is that your body is going through a pandemic. Like, we don't go through pandemics all the time. And so, you let your body be how it's going to be. Your body's keeping you safe and getting you through. And maybe one of the ways that your body is keeping you safe, and one of the ways that stress is playing on your body, is through the gaining of weight. But everybody, like, weight fluctuation is normal. We will all fluctuate in our weight from year to year. None of us are the 7 pounds and 8 ounces we were when we were born. Our weight is going to fluctuate. And so it's about telling people and reminding people of that, and reminding people that, okay, if your weight changes, then maybe buy new clothes. Now, I recognize there's a lot of privilege in saying, just buy new clothes, because not everybody has money. But it's like, don't just like wait on your weight to live your life, and just allow yourself that space to change and grow. The gyms will open again. You will get to go back to the gym again. Like, it's okay. And then certainly with the people who come to my classes, mental health, like Joanne mentioned, like, a lot of people really have struggled with depression and anxiety. So I find that when students are coming to my class, they just want to be able to move. Toronto has been in such a brutal lockdown. We finally reopened on Friday. And so, we haven't had a lot of opportunities to move and get out there. So people have been really looking for ways to still keep moving and keep, anxiety at bay during this lockdown. And virtual classes have been kind of the stopgap. But Joanne, like you, I too miss teaching people live, because teaching people over Zoom, it's tight. But teaching people in a class, like a Zumba class with the strobe lights and the bass and the party atmosphere, the club atmosphere, it's what gets me going. Like, as an instructor, I always tell my students that I feed off of your energy. When people tell me, oh, you have so much energy, it's because y'all have energy. I'm feeding off of you all. So I miss that. And it'll be really interesting to see if we'll ever get back to that, because to be honest, I'm not quite sure. And then I guess for me personally, I've been sitting more often than I really should, to the point where I'm in physiotherapy because my bum muscles are not firing up like they should, gluteal amnesia. So all that sitting, and something that I'm not used to, which I would have been doing less of before the pandemic.
All right. Gregory, anything to add?
I think just to echo, I think people, throughout this lockdown, sort of everyone had a very different experience, but I think a lot of people recognized the need, the physiological, the human need to move our bodies. I know my relationship with exercising and working out changed drastically during the pandemic, because I again struggled with depression and anxiety, and I just couldn't figure out how to get out of it. And I realized I move my body for a living. I'm not a person who can just live in a small space, which no one can. But I was so not used to it that it took a huge toll on me. And I think it's exciting that this pandemic has sort of showed people that they need to move, that they need to find their way of celebrating their body through joyful movement. And I think the quarantine 15 is a funny thing that we all joke about, but it's low-key a little exciting, because I don't even know if we would have had this conversation today if the majority, if people who have never gained weight before in their lives hadn't gained that quarantine 15 and were sort of forced to reevaluate their relationship with their own body. They might have realized how they treat people who are in larger bodies, and it sort of felt like a bit of a welcome to the party, baby. Which it sort of empowered me to create everybody on stage. That's the only reason it exists today, is because I was able to take the time to go on that journey with my own body, and people were so receptive to it because their body might have changed throughout this lockdown. So I think it's again, yeah, I didn't teach on Zoom this entire time. I just like I couldn't make it happen. There's something so powerful, which I'm sure both of you know, about having people in the room. But on the flip side of that, when I was teaching at Sheridan back in March, we embraced this group of dancers who, you know, were in the prime of their dance career, being 21-year-olds, ready to graduate and go out into the industry, and they had spent the last year of their training dancing in their living rooms, you know, and getting eviction notices because they're tap dancing in their basements and stuff, you know. So welcoming people back into the room, I think it's something we are all going to be as instructors having to be incredibly not delicate, but embrace people, and because there's going to be a lot of anxiety about going back into these spaces again, and there's going to be a lot to celebrate, but I think we're also going to have to be very patient with people and help them feel comfortable in those spaces again, because it's going to be huge. It's going to be a big adjustment. So that's sort of my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Dr. Ganson?
Yeah, I think, well, my thought would be, I think there was initially like a little bit of a separate question, just sort of focused on like stressors and things of that nature. And I think everybody's focused on that in their responses too, just that COVID has sort of upended our lives upside down in so many ways. We certainly spend more time on, you know, virtual platforms like Zoom or even on social media, because that's the way we engage with our friends, because we can't see them in person, or our family members. And so I think that opens up doors for comparisons, that opens up doors for more advertising, that opens up more doors for more weight stigma or more weight bias, will open up doors for just more like, you know, just more negativity or more social comparison that obviously can create sort of problematic thoughts and problematic feelings about our bodies, about ourselves, you know, increase anxiety, increase depression, increase social isolation, which obviously then can lead to things like poor eating habits or binge eating or eating as a mechanism to sort of self-regulate or feel good about oneself. And so certainly there's problems there that I think are emblematic. And I think, you know, there's been some conversations I think that are like happening a little bit about that. I think people have mentioned here the quarantine 15, and there's been a lot of stigma about that. But I also think there's been a lot of kind of like what Greg is mentioning, like opening the doors a bit of like, hey, it's okay if you've gained weight. Like, this is an extremely traumatizing time. You're in your house like all the time, and if thankfully you're not sick and you didn't die, or maybe you didn't have a family member die, like if you gained 15 pounds, like you did pretty well. You're all right. So I think there is some sort of acceptance of like weight is not the worst case scenario here. And I think the more we can have those conversations and open those doors is obviously really important. What I will say really quickly is that I do worry slightly about sort of the boomerang effect that's going to happen quite rapidly as things start to open up more, and as the world gets back into some sort of semblance of normalcy, where we are interacting maybe more in person, where there is more anxiety about seeing people after a long period of time. How are they going to look at me? Are they going to see that I gained weight? Are they going to see X, Y, and Z about me? What do I need to do to change my body to get back to that certain place or to look a certain way? I do sort of worry a little bit about what that boomerang will be like. And I use this example with people recently, is like Will Smith on Instagram has like posted all these images about his body and like sort of body shamed himself recently. And sort of like missed an opportunity to be a really positive male role model, to be like, hey, I probably, you know, ate a little bit too much over the quarantine, and I gained some weight, and like, you know, like this, I was depressed, or I was upset, or I was anxious, or my life was sort of challenging. But instead, he sort of like turned this in a marketing tool and like partnered up with YouTube to like show that he's going to lose weight now. And I think that's sort of a problematic sort of example of like what may happen in the near future as more people like go back to gyms or go back to sort of trying to achieve or lose the weight that they gained, which may lead not again to not all people, but some people might turn into problematic behaviors, problematic thinking styles, versus, you know, some people will be totally fine and maybe they'll lose some weight, maybe they won't, maybe they'll feel healthy, maybe they won't. Who knows what their relationship will be like. But certainly a subsect of people will certainly struggle with it in more significant ways, which is certainly problematic. last thing I'll say is that certainly COVID has exposed a lot more problems with eating and eating disorders and body image among young people. There's been lots of documented reports of that, like sick kids and sort of local hospitals in Toronto having more, more increased calls and more increased need for treatment for young people for eating disorders. I know that Kids Help Phone has had like a really significant increase in phone calls around body image issues. So I think that's like the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately. And I think that we'll see a lot more in the near future of more significant problems, basically because COVID has uncovered a lot of things. So that's maybe my rambling answer, but that's what I'll say.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. All right. So that's all the questions I have prepared today. Thank you so much for answering. Kimia and Ingrid are kind of like be preparing summaries of your responses today. So I kind of feel bad for them because they have to write a lot because there were a lot of great responses from all of you. Let's move on to the Q&A session. I'd like to pass things on to Cass so she can kick off the Q&A session. So
Rahina. Okay, hi everyone. If you have a question, yes, like Rahina said, pop it in the chat or raise your hand. I'm going to pull up the participant list here so I can see if anyone's raising their hand. But while people are thinking, we can start off with just a question that we have prepared that's a little bit more easy to answer than some of the other ones that we had before. Dr. Hansen, you kind of spoke about this just now, but the impact of kind of celebrities and social media influencers and that kind of industry altogether, and kind of the idea of like a body positive icon, how does that affect our idea of what our bodies kind of what this conversation should look like? So kind of, if I'm thinking of like a Lizzo example being always lauded as, oh, you're so brave for putting yourself out there, for her just posting a picture of herself like any other celebrity. So kind of, I think we can start with Simone there this time. Or Simone's just disappeared.
I realized the sunset. So I was literally going to turn my computer. But I'm glad you mentioned Lizzo. Lizzo is who came to mind. And so at one point in my life, and I think for many people, having people in plus size bodies is great, and representation matters, and it's helpful to have people, not even just plus size bodies, but since eating disorders are part of this discussion, people who share about their eating disorder journey, I think, and their body dysmorphia, I think that's really helpful. The thing is, oftentimes when we have these icons, we put them on a pedestal, we pedestalize them. So the issue then becomes what happens when they're not perfect, and what happens when they're still struggling when they're on this pedestal. So Lizzo is a perfect example, because Lizzo comes out with this music and this it's feel good and body positive and, feeling good as hell and all that kind of stuff. And then Lizzo talks about, I'm eating this ice and do this ice and fruit thing. And and then people are like, yo, why are you doing this? And she's talking about losing weight. And then all of a sudden, all her comments under that one photo or video was like, oh my gosh, Lizzo's losing weight. Why are you trying to lose that? And everybody lost their minds. They're like, oh my gosh, Lizzo's not being body positive. What are we going to do? So that's what happens when you put people on a pedestal, right? So I would actually encourage people to become their own body positive icon. Like, you only look up to yourself and don't look up to any specific person, because they will fall and they're on their own journey. Same thing with Will Smith. Will Smith is on his own journey. And also it is not anybody's responsibility to model body positivity to you. So we place upon them a responsibility that they never even asked for, right? So become your own hero.
Thank you. I like that answer a lot. I think that's wonderful. Greg, would you like to go next? I saw you cheering there.
Simone, you're killing me. No, that's the answer. That is the perfect answer. I do agree. It's something I talk to my therapist a lot about, is how I sort of have a platform where I talk about body image and body positivity, specifically the fat phobia in the theater industry. And I fluctuated hundreds of pounds throughout my 20s. So it is a concern of mine that, what if people don't look at me and they see, I'm not I'm not fat enough, or I'm not thin enough, or I'm not, or what if I lose weight? What if I, and I think what someone said about creating your own body positive icons and being that for yourself, because it is your own journey, and people can inspire you, but if you're not living your own life, are you feeling good as hell? I don't think so. So yeah, you're absolutely right, someone. You do need to find it for yourself, and if those people get you there and get you started on that journey, that's really exciting. But they're human beings, and they don't owe you anything. So I think it's a bigger conversation about society's obsession with celebrity, but I think you're absolutely right, Simone.
I love that. Absolutely. Fantastic. Joanna, would you like to add anything to that? Or
yes, and of course I have to agree with Simone. And Greg, your last statement there about society, who are the ones that are bringing this out, it's that where we all follow each other like sheep kind of thing, just because we think that it's the right thing to do or something to hang on to. And if we just find it within ourselves to be our own icons. And when I think of this and this conversation in terms of celebrities, I can't help think about my daughters. Number one, through the years, of course, the image of what you're supposed to look like was always, again, as we spoke through this whole conversation, was mostly a female thing. But we know that males are just as affected, and they have the same wants and needs as anyone else. We're all human beings, and we all want compassion, and we all want to be able to cry and all those things. But in saying that, I do feel blessed because my three girls, who are young adults, are happy in their bodies. They all don't have, none of us feel perfect, but we encourage each other and we help each other. And having a little bit of this or a little bit of that is we have always tried to just what Greg said, if people can get you there and pick up your self-esteem to know that it's okay to gain some weight, like Dr. Kyle mentioned, and just live with the changes, go with the flow. And so having three girls, I raised them on my own, and I was just so happy to do that. And through their growing years, it was all a different conversation. And luckily, the three of them had conversations within, and then their friends encouraged my girls. And so they hung around, and luckily it just ended up being wonderful because of the mindset and the people we hung around with. And if anything was negative, we would talk about it. So conversations, I mean, if I had a therapist, if I could afford one, I would have one because it's so important. And during this COVID, it's made me so anxious in times, and I've lost my appetite, and at times where I could only have juices, and that really bothered me because I didn't want to lose weight. And I know it sounds maybe like, what do you mean? No, I didn't want to, because there you go again, back to health. It didn't feel healthy for me to be thinner. And I'm not thin to begin with, but being thinner than I was felt unhealthy. And it felt more because it felt it felt very mental and anxiety filled. So yeah, just being your own icon. And I felt, in saying that, I felt like I was my three daughters' icon. Without knowing it, I felt that I was able to instill this body image, beauty comes within. And I do feel very lucky. I just want to knock on wood there. That hopefully they can also help their friends and their children and so on. So it is a whole community. It's a whole society thing that needs to change, and not have Hollywood people be the people who are, or the brushed model who probably doesn't even want to be brushed anyways, who gets brushed, and so on. It needs to be a healthy mental image.
I think it's really wonderful that you kind of are providing your daughters with that and like very close, immediate acceptance right there.
Thanks, Cass. Yeah, I feel that the communication has been the best thing, is just from when they were small, just when I went through my trauma through puberty, I made it like we just lived with what was happening at the time and gone with the flow. So yeah, icons. Yeah, if you're leading a group, you want to be a good person, hopefully.
Thanks, Joanne. Amazing. Dr. Kyle, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think everybody summed it up pretty nicely.
Fantastic. We have a question from the audience. It's an anonymous person who says that they used to be a professional dancer and quit because of severe body image issues. They noticed that their body is changing now, which like meaning losing tone. And to be honest, they don't care. But the media and Instagram makes it very difficult, makes it hard. They're trying to find exercise again for functional purposes and mental health promotion. What would you recommend for someone who's going through that journey, which I think a lot of people I know I could relate to. So we can start with, if anyone specifically would like to start, but we can start with Dr. Kyle if you'd like. If there's any resources you know of.
Yeah, sure. I think one thing I was thinking is, might be if you haven't seen it already, you might want to watch the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, which is all about social media and algorithms. And I think your comment here, question about, how the media and Instagram make it challenging. I think understanding and knowing that Instagram is sort of like using you as your best worst enemy because it's constantly feeding you the images that are, you're liking or you're viewing or you're staying on longer, like by looking at or zooming into, like it's capturing all that data. And so therefore it's like refeeding you similar images, which ultimately is going to make you feel maybe poorly about yourself, or could make you feel poorly about yourself. So just understanding that like there's a game there that's happening is really important. And maybe getting off of that game or say taking some time away from that game is maybe going to be helpful. The other thing I'd say too is that it's likely that if you're a professional dancer, I'm going to make some assumptions here, that you've danced for a very long time. And so you've been in a culture of dance that's been probably pretty stressful and pretty competitive and pretty intense. And so to think about it as a like flipping the switch and maybe wanting to sort of find, exercise as a more health promoting activity, it's not necessarily going to happen quickly. It might take some time. And so think about how long it took you to get to a place where you might have felt poorly about your body within this context of professional dance. It's likely going to take you some time to get out of that space as well. So, you mentioned it as a journey. I think of it as a journey. It's a process. It's in the level of engagement. As everyone's talked about today, like it's a constant sort of way of engaging with yourself and challenging yourself to sort of catch your thinking process, and work towards, neutrality, positivity, whichever you want to call it when it comes to your body and when it comes to exercise.
Fantastic. Thank you. I like that idea of kind of finding an opposite to being in that performance state of the exercise and into kind of, this is for me and my health. If we want to move on to the next person, Simone, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, Kyle, thank you. So Kyle touched on a lot of the things I would have mentioned, especially Kyle, I like that you mentioned about, sorry, I should call you Dr. Ganson. You worked hard for that degree. For especially, mentioning being a professional dancer, when I was trying to think of my response, I actually never thought of that angle. There is an influencer on Instagram who talks about fitness for people who are professional athletes, because I realized that if you've been a professional athlete, your mentality and your relationship to fitness is a slightly different than the average Joe. So I don't remember the person's name, but hopefully if you Google those words, fitness for former professional athletes on Instagram or something, that it'll bring that individual up. Whenever somebody, asks me about a health journey and how to start one, I always try to ask them, what do you like to do for fun? And then, so sometimes that question helps. Sometimes you're like, well, I like dancing. I like listening to soca when I'm making my roti in the kitchen. And then sometimes you're like, I don't like doing anything. It's the people who say they don't like doing anything that it's a little bit more challenging. But our bodies were created for movement. So I refuse to believe that there isn't one activity that you couldn't possibly enjoy. So I would pose that question to you, think about it. And at the very least, I think walking is a really great step. I always mention walking to people because it's accessible, it's free. Most people have somewhere where they can walk. And walking is really good for you. Just you know, you don't have the pressure on your knees. It helps you with your posture. You are working your core, your abs, and your back when you're doing so. You're working your glutes. You're obviously working your legs. You can listen to a podcast and music. So it's a really great first entry level exercise. For those people for whom walking is difficult, I also recommend, you know, aqua fitness and getting into the pool, because that also is not a weight bearing exercise. And certainly the people who typically come to my aqua fitness classes are senior citizens, older people, for that very reason. And that just reminded me about the earlier question about how to make fitness more accessible and what you do in your classes, modifications. So make sure that you're going to a place and you're in a fitness class that that doesn't just say, okay, this is the exercise and that's what you have to do, but provides you with modifications, with regressions and progressions, which means how to make it easier and how to make it harder. Speaking about regressions, another type of regression is a fitness regression, i.e., you've been a dancer for a long time, it's COVID, you're not exercising right now, and so your body is going to regress, right? But because that you were an exerciser before, your body will more easily and more quickly get into a fitness level than if you had not been a non-exerciser. So hopefully that's a little bit encouraging to you. So find something you like. And if there's absolutely nothing that you like, walk. And if you can't walk, go to the pool.
Thank you for that. That was a well-rounded, accessible answer, and I love that. Thank you. We'll move on to Greg. Did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really great points that have already been mentioned. But the one thing I do want to talk to you about is sort of reevaluating your relationship with dance, because it does sort of sadden me that body image is the reason that you left dance. And I understand this for dancers, there's a lot of trauma associated with your body and the dance world. So if it's not something you're ready to embrace and sort of dive into, I encourage you to absolutely find something else that you love. I found walking during this lockdown, and it sort of changed my life and my approach to fitness. But I do want to encourage you, when you're ready, to reevaluate why you love dance in the first place, because I think for a lot of dancers, it's the way we communicate, it's the way we express ourselves, it's the way we feel connected to the earth. And I think that's also something that you're gonna have to reconcile with your mental health if you lose that entire part of your identity. I think as dancers, we sort of start at a very young age, and a lot of us don't even know if it's something we like doing. It's just something we've always done. And so I think sort of reevaluating, when you're ready, that relationship with dance, and finding an organic way of coming back to it that isn't maybe in the professional world. Maybe it's something that you find a new style that you fall in love with, or something. But I think making sure you still find that connection with dance, if that's something you want to pursue, because that's going to be something that weighs heavily on your mental health if it's been your entire life. So
I think that's an important part to bring up as well. Joanne, did you want to add anything to what's been said?
Sure. Yeah, no, I do agree with Greg, and of course with Simone and Kyle. Dr. Kyle, your comments were really bang on. And Greg, you hit on, like for me, it reminded me of, I was so discouraged with ballet, and jazz started to feel a little bit better, like because I really wanted to be the ballerina. And so I did come out of it. And I did enjoy the Western disciplines, but it seemed like my body was just not the right type, or I just wasn't tall enough or thin enough. And when I started Middle Eastern arts, and it became something that my body was just naturally able to do, I don't know why I didn't know that before. It just felt more comfortable for me to do the isolations as opposed to the linear moves. And so there was a period where I went from heavy dance to fitness. I just thought, you know what? I'm the person that just needs to burn energy. And I did that so much that I started teaching just because I showed up at the gym all the time. And if the teacher didn't show up, they'd say, hey, Joe, can you teach the class? And I would just do it for fun. So I had the passion and the energy, and I missed dance so much. And it's when I found the dance that worked for me later on in the years that I was able to love it again. And the stigma of looking the part didn't matter anymore. It felt like it was a dance that it was okay to have that little extra there. And then it turned into a professional career, which I never thought would. But it was the passion and the drive that I had that turned it into a career. But the happiness of going from one type of dance and finding another was everything. It mentally helped me grow. Just getting my energy out really, really helped. And back to what Simone and everyone was saying about walking, I totally recommend 20 minutes of walking every day. That is really, really like, it does everything. It detoxes, it helps you clear your mind. It does everything, like you said, of Simone, body parts and arms and legs and glutes. Yeah, so I do agree. If it's a passion you have and you're leaving it because the thing you loved made you leave, then coming to terms with it and understanding why you left and understanding that maybe dance is still something I really want to pursue is to find, another venue, another way to express that part of you, which is important for well-being.
Great. Okay, thanks everyone. So we're gonna do kind of like a last final question and sort of start wrapping up. But kind of talking about the assumptions and expectations of the industry standards and social perceptions of bodies, whether it's dancers or otherwise. And then kind of talking about, Simone, you brought up intersectionality and the different levels of that gender, ableism, or color, or age, and all those kinds of different things impact how we go about that or think about it. Either in your own work, like sort of in your own work, how are you working on increasing or addressing the visibility and acceptance of diverse bodies in this community? And then kind of as you answer that, if there's anything else you wanted to add to the conversation before we wrap up altogether, feel free to do that as well. We can start with Simone.
Oops, I was hoping you were going to start with me. I still have to think. Okay, so, but I do have an answer. So my answer, how am I challenging the assumption and expectation of industry standards, is I show up. I show up as myself. I did not wait until I had a six-pack to teach. I did not wait until I felt like I would fit in to teach. I show up. I show up with myself. And I mean, after COVID, I'm going to show up with my COVID-19 gaining, quarantine 15 gaining self, with my other quarantine 15 gaining students. And we are going to dance our A double snakes off, and we're going to have fun because we made it through a pandemic. So just by showing up, I find it is the representation we need. It bashes down stereotypes. People are able to see movement in a body that may be unconventional. That's my answer.
Thank you. That's amazing. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Greg, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I totally agree. Being a plus size person in fitness or in theater or in dance is an act of rebellion. And I think taking up the space you deserve, not finding validity in other parts of the art form that aren't just surface based, showing up and proving that you deserve to be there when people don't think you do, is educational. I think the work that I've been doing with everybody on stage, we've been not just approaching the fat phobia aspect of theater, but how racialized it is, the ableism that exists in it is. So we're and especially talking about gender identity and how that plays into these roles. You truly come out of theater school knowing your place in the industry, and to deviate from that is, again, an act of rebellion. And I want to encourage everyone to, when, especially for those who are coming at this from the theater perspective, when you see a breakdown that says whatever, this, that, going out for the role that you are qualified for, and the role that you can sing, the role that you can dance, that's an act of rebellion, and that will make the person who's casting challenge their own biases. And I think that's important. That's the only way that anything's ever going to change, is by challenging people with love and making space for people in our community. So.
Fantastic. Joanne, would you like to go ahead?
Okay. Yes. So I agree. I think showing up and doing the work for you, and definitely that role model. And in our case, if it's a teacher or a guiding factor, is it definitely where it starts. They do look for us. They do look to us for comfort and for that it's okay to walk in a class. And I always encourage uniqueness. Like, I just think I try my best to have everyone not come out looking like a cookie cutter situation in all my troops and all my groups. And I think that's very inspiring for the teacher too, when someone comes to the class so open and vulnerable too, because anything that we express and say, it's going to be an impact. And I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I do agree both with Greg and Simone, how important that is to show up and do it for you, and give yourself a pat on the back, when you do something, like whatever it is, big or small, a little goes a long way. And I think I say that every day, because I find friends say, oh my God, I didn't do anything, or today I just did this, and words like loser and this and that. That's the other thing I encourage, is not saying words like that. And so it changes a little bit with what Simone and Greg are saying a little bit, not because I totally agree with the word, whatever the word is, if it's fat, if it's big, if it's voluptuous, and to embrace all those words, because it's a package. It's not just about how you look. I always try to encourage from the inside out. So we are definitely influencers, and just having students come and show up, to me, is everything. And then you're responsible for the way they leave the room and how they're thinking and believing.
Oh, I'm unmuted already. Perfect. Thanks, Joanne. Thank you. Dr. Ganson, would you like to add anything there? Or if there's anything that hasn't been said yet in the panel overall?
Yeah, no, I think the only thing I'd add is, like, for my space, is just trying to continue to develop and disseminate research knowledge on these areas, and promote that knowledge, to whether that helps make people feel less alone, or uncover sort of new novel ideas or new novel experiences of people, to hopefully guide conversations like this, conversations in society at large, clinical interventions, policy changes. Certainly that's what I hope to do in order to sort of help break down some of these issues, or just kind of unpack some of these things as we go along.
Amazing. Okay, that's it for the evening. Thank you everyone for coming, to all our panelists and attendees. And we apologize for going just a bit over time, but it was such a wonderful discussion. It was, I think, absolutely worth it to stay and talk. We also want to thank our U of T affinity partners, Manulife, MBNA, and TD Insurance for making all these events that happen through Hart House possible. Finally, thank you so much to the attendees for the questions in the chat and being proactive. We'll be sending a post-event survey in the chat that Jillian should be sending, and we encourage you to fill it out. It'll take about 2 minutes, and all the questions aren't compulsory. We'd love to hear any feedback you have so that we can make future events like this better and more catered to what you'd actually like to hear. And so lastly, we'll be sending a follow-up email in the next week that has links to all the resources that we have either discussed. Simone mentioned some other ones that we can kind of send to you. This email will come from the Festival of Dance email, and it'll also have a link to the post-event survey. The post-event handout listing the resources also has a small section with a few questions that prompt you to reflect and introspect on the topics that were discussed today. We would like you to draw your attention to some upcoming events this month that were pasted, the links were pasted in the chat. And again, thank you so much to our panelists, attendees, and of course our planning team who worked very hard behind the scenes to make this event a success. We hope you have a great rest of your weekend and are staying safe, and most importantly, taking care of yourself. Enjoy the freedom from lockdown. Manage to get outside if you can. Goodbye. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening and weekend.